Phil Becerra,
Here.
Bruce Bauer,
Here.
James Gartner,
Here.
Sean Mill,
Here.
Alexander Nall,
Here.
Lynette Verino. Here. Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Would everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This is a portion for public comments for non-agenda items. Does a member of the public have any public comments on non-agenda items? If so, you may fill out a request to speak form with the secretary. And after introduction, have 3 minutes to speak unless an extension of time is granted by the chairman. Anybody have anything non-agenda? Okay. Let's move on to the consent calendar. First item of business is the minutes from the regular meeting of October 12th. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Becerra.
I'd like to make a motion to approve it with two edits.
Okay.
On number 1, on page 2, for the variance, it didn't really say what it was, and I believe that was the sign variance for the motorsports place. And then that we, on page 6, we are adjourned to 5 p.m. instead of 5:30.
So you have a motion with corrections.
Correct.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Bauer, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item of business is commissioner disclosures. Do any commissioners have anything they wish to disclose with regards to items on tonight's agenda? Nope. Seeing none? Okay. We'll move on to the business calendar and the public hearing. This is time and place for the public hearing on item number 1, conditional use permit number 2015-17. And is Ann presenting this, or are you going to do it, Vince?
I am, sir. I am.
You're Ann today.
I
Okay.
am.
You're Ann. Okay.
I'll be whatever I need to be tonight.
There you go.
We're missing the mic, so I'm going to put a hand mic here. Is that, can you hear me? All right, perfect. Thank you. Good evening. Can I go back 1 second? And you missed the first item, Mr. Chairman, about the introduction of Candida Neal, our planning manager. But that's probably appropriate that Hassan, when he's here, he can make the introduction on her behalf here. But that's Candida Neal, your new planning manager. So.
Great.
Now let me go ahead and get on this public hearing item for you this evening here. The item before you is a CUP request for the First Street Care Home, located at 2151 East First Street. The proposal is to convert an existing 75-unit hotel into a 72-bed care facility. And there's going to be no expansion of the project itself, but there will be some interior and exterior improvements to the project. Some of the exterior improvements include remodel of the exterior facade to get a more current, up-to-date facade, some new landscaping, some new signage, parking lot repair. So those are some of the major exterior improvements. Then you got some interior improvements. They're basically going to make those units habitable for residential units. They're also going to provide some interior spaces, common area spaces, such as kitchens, meeting spaces, and dining areas. So that pretty much consists of most of the project, basically in a nutshell. The project's in the commercial zone, the Metro East overlay zone as well, and since it's commercial zoning, it requires a CUP for the care home use. Here's an aerial map. Again, it's currently the guest home inn. Right now, it's been there since 1972, been there for a long time. Again, zoning's commercial. Metro East overlay. Just to the west, you've got the new 1901 project being built by Lion Communities. Project's surrounded by a combination of office, commercial, and food uses, restaurant uses. Here's a site plan. As I mentioned before, there's no expansion proposed, merely just a remodel and a rehabilitation of the existing site. Here's a floor plan. You have some floor plans in your packets, a little better to see. This is just one of 2 floors, but again, it's interior improvements for the project site. And then, as I mentioned, some exterior improvements too. You have some elevations. If you've been out by there, you've seen it. It's quite a significant cleanup of what's out there now and a modernization of the project. So the issues before you, care home use, again, needs a CUP. We found that it's consistent with the commercial zoning designation. It meets all the standards, such as parking and landscaping, or it will meet all the standards once it's rehabbed. Supports several goals and policies of the city's general plan, including providing a variety of residential housing, as well as providing some support housing opportunities. The operator is also going to partner with Mercy House, a very well-known and well-respected operator of care facilities in the city. So those two synergies will be a very critical asset to this area here. It'll be a great improvement to the site. And we have conditions of approval that ensure the project's going to meet our standards and stay in compliance for the near future. And with that, our recommendation is that you approve the CUP as conditioned.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions for Vince? Okay, no questions.
Thank you.
Have we received any written communications on this? Okay. This time I'd like to open the public portion of the hearing. If you wish to address the Planning Commission, please file a request to speak form with the Secretary. Comments are limited to 3 minutes unless an extension of time is granted by the chairman. The action of the Planning Commission is final following consent of the City Council unless, if allowed by the Santa Ana Municipal Code, an appeal to the City Council is filed with the clerk of the council and a copy is sent to the Planning Department within 10 days the date of the Commission's action, or unless a public hearing by the City Council. So is there any guests out there that wish to speak? Filled out a form or not filled out a form, or the applicant?
Good evening, Chairman, Commissioners. Thank you for having us. On behalf of the applicant, I'm Eric Payne with Community Development Partners. Just want to let you guys know we're here for comments along with our partner Mercy House, Larry Haynes and Linda Wilson, and Gail Eastman, consultant helping us on outreach. So if there's any questions that I can answer, please shoot away.
Are there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Bauer.
If you could you explain the relationship, the partnership with Mercy House? I know the people at Mercy House, I know the good work that they do. If you could explain that a little further.
Sure. Yes, we were the lead developer that identified the site and the project concept and then brought in Mercy House to partner. We'd been working with them on another project in the county. And we're local from Newport Beach, but wanted someone that was on the ground here as local as possible and worked in the supportive service space. So Mercy House and CDP will both be general partners in the partnership that owns the property long term. And Mercy House will be overseeing all of the operational components, not from a property management standpoint, but from resident services coordination.
Okay, excellent.
Are there any other questions? I just have a comment.
Sure.
I really like what you're doing with the project. I like the renovation, and it's a great looking project.
Thank you. Yeah, we take a lot of pride on our end, CDP, on all of our projects and trying to promote progressive architecture and design. Yeah. So instead of just going in with some paint or lipstick or turning it, keeping close to what's actually there now, we decided to try and do a full facelift on it to bring a more modern aesthetic.
Oh, yeah, it's a lot of nice facelift.
Yeah, and then we'll have
welcome change.
Community garden, a large community garden component too for the residents. It ties into kind of food education.
So yeah, just want to let you know it's a great job.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions at all? Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you.
The public hearing is now closed. I'd like to entertain a motion and or discussion, or both.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Knoll?
I move that we adopt a resolution approving additional use permit number 2015-17 as conditioned.
Commissioner Mill?
I have a second with a comment.
Go ahead.
My comment is this is exactly the type of thing I'm looking for in that part of town. When we talked about the Lion Project and all the things, that part of First Street is one of the major gateways into our city, and it's so badly in need of a facelift. So thank you so much. There's nothing I want to see more than those motels in that area go away. Go away. And this is a great start. I think along with the Lion Project, and we're gonna start to see that area of First Street begin to flourish, bring the kind of people that we want to be in that area. That area, once the sun goes down at night, is not a nice area. It has a seedy element to it, and I think that this is a great start. And I want to thank you for that. And with that, I'm going to second Commissioner Null's motion.
So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously, except for Commissioner Alderetti, who is absent. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
That is our only item on the business calendar. So we'll move on to the work-study session.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
If I may, before we start the study session, I would like to introduce Candida Neal, who is sitting to the right of the city attorney. Candida is our new planning manager. We would like to welcome her in this session, where we're going to also go over the general plan update and some training for the commission for the staff. Candida comes after running her own business, her own private planning firm for more than 11 years. Before that, she was a planning manager for 5.5 years in the city of Pomona, and before that, she worked as a planner in various different cities. Over the last 11 years that Candida has been running a private firm, primarily in environmental planning, general plan update, zoning code update. She has also been acting planning manager and planning director for many different cities over the years. She comes with a wealth of more than 30 years of experience, and we're very happy to have her seasoned hands and mind with all those years of experience to come and join our planning division and lead it at the time that we're starting such an ambitious work program that we're doing in-house, I might add. So let's please join me in welcoming Candida Neal. Welcome aboard.
Welcome aboard.
Now, the Planning Commission is going to be the first commission to receive this wonderful training from our city attorney, Sonia Carvalho. And after this, we're actually going to transfer the same training to other commissions for the city, but the Planning Commission will be the first to receive.
Well, the first thing I did, of course, is to drop our sign here.
Oh, man, you're throwing me under the bus already.
I know. I don't know. Whoops. Can you? Thank you. How do you do it from here? I don't look at my back for staff as well. Do you mind if I'm not mind. I do. I'm not great with PowerPoint, so we'll see what we can do here, but.
Okay. Well, thank you. I want to just thank the Planning Commission for allowing me to come here this evening and to talk to you about some training, explain to you what we're doing. We had a talk among members of the executive management team and our city manager, really trying to improve our processes. And one of the things that we noticed is that all of our commissioners have different ways of doing business, which is great because all our commissions handle different subject matter. But we thought that we'd like to do some of the things that have been done in other cities where many of us have come from. We have a lot of new staff members or new to the processes that are here. And so one day we were just having a conversation about our different commissions and really how important our commissions are to the city council decision-making process. And so we thought we'd start with the Planning Commission, and then we're going to be visiting all of the different commissions to go over similar thoughts and ideas. So what I've given to you in this little packet is a little PowerPoint that I'm going to go over. But there's also a copy of a little guide called The Planning Commissioner's Role. I don't know how many of you have ever seen this before. This is published by the Institute for Local Government. It's a really handy guide. And then what we also did, in something I'm more familiar with some of the other cities that I work with, is that each of our commissions has established commission norms. Just some thoughts and ideas about how the commission will communicate with staff, with the council, how they will interact with each other. And this is by no means something that you have to accept. This is something that you would take a look at. These are best practices that we're recommending based on what many other cities do, so we've provided that to you. I always recommend that a commission revisits its bylaws and its rules at least once a year to make sure that everyone's still on the same page. And one of the things that I noticed here in Santa Ana since I've been here just a little over 3 years is we don't do formal commission training. So I have a question for all of you. When you were appointed as a commissioner, did you just show up one day, or did you get a handbook and did you get some training, or did you just get thrown into the deep end? If you're thrown into the deep end?
It's a handbook. I received a handbook once.
Okay.
I think it has the plastic still on it, but it's like, no, I have it in my office. It was a little handbook.
Yeah, so we thought we'd just hand out these guides, and one of the first question that I've raised is, going to the next slide, is why do you need this training? Why are we all here? And one of the reasons I think training is important is that we implement best practices. We all, I think, genuinely can agree that we want a high-functioning city. And there are high-functioning cities in this state, and many of us that are here working in the city have had the privilege of working in some of those high-functioning places. And if we just really want to be honest, some of our systems are not functioning as highly or as well as they need to be functioning. And that's seen in our everyday processes. It's seen in the fact that we're having to revisit a general plan after how many years it's on. And so I think one of the reasons we're here today is that we want to implement best practices. We want to be the very best. We came to you first because you have the highest profile. We thought if we could start with the Planning Commission, of all the commissions, you have the highest profile in the city, and that you could set the standard by agreeing and saying that the training is important, it's necessary, and there's some value in it. As I mentioned before, my assumption would be that you didn't receive training. You all had to jump in and swim. And so we thought it would be a great time to come forward, and as we have new staff, we want to achieve the best communication among all of you and staff members, and establishing expectations up front is key. And particularly when you've had staff that are coming from different places and have had different types of experiences and might say, whoa, I've never seen that before, or gosh, they're doing a really great job. That's a best practice I could implement at another city. And then finally, we just want to talk about the fact that great planning commissions make great communities happen. You're such an integral part of what will happen here in Santa Ana with all these great goals that people are starting to talk about in terms of development. And I don't know, because I haven't sat with you as a city attorney. We have our assistants sit with you from meeting to meeting. And I'm curious, as we go through this, I want to make my presentation and then I'll have some time for questions. But I'm really curious to hear from you as well, as how do you feel about the process? As I said, I've been privileged to work in cities where the mayor of our city meets with the chairs of all of the commissioners at least on a monthly or quarterly basis to improve communication, to really hear what it is that the commissions are concerned about, because you do serve an important role. I don't know whether that happens here in this city, but as a best practice, we'd really love to implement something like that, even though maybe the chair says, I'm really busy, do I have to give another hour? But that level of communication, I don't know how often you speak with the council members that appointed you. Do you guys have regular meetings with those council members? I would say some of you do and some of you don't, and I can kind of see that in the processes that we see. So we want to make sure that we're having great communication and that we are making you the best commission that you can be. I'm going to go to the next page. What I wanted to share with you is that what must a really good planning commissioner know? If you're saying, I enjoy being a planning commissioner and I want to be the very best planning commissioner that I can be, there are certain things, or general standards, kind of like minimum standards, that we look at and we say every planning commissioner should know about zoning. They should know about the subdivision laws, the general plan, and conditional use permits. I've served cities where someone has started to serve as a planning commissioner and had no idea what these things are. So if you're one of those people that already know it because you've been serving for many years or because this is what you do for a living, or if you're that brand new person that doesn't know, my recommendation would be to reach out to staff, reach out to the city attorney's office so that we can get you the resources you need to learn about these things. The California Environmental Quality Act under CEQA, I can tell you, this is being audio recorded, but we are not on video, but I will tell you that I think our practices here in the city of Santa Ana are not adequate when it comes to CEQA. I don't think that we're doing as thorough a job as we need to be doing to balance and protect some of the environmental factors that are out there. That doesn't mean you stop development. It means that you just do development smarter and that you look at some of the potential impacts. You have to understand the Planning Commission procedures. I know some of you have sat through the 2-hour AB 1234 training, but you really do have to understand what the Brown Act is all about. Because you're a public official, you're sitting there, you have a responsibility because that law applies to you. You have that responsibility to understand that law. You have to understand the authority and duties of the Planning Commission, your legal and ethical considerations, and just the standards for Planning Commission decisions. And again, I've made the assumptions that when you became commissioners, or at least this commission as a whole, has never sat down all together and really talked about what your procedures are. Although I've seen a little bit of it tonight, it seems like they're sound. I just wonder if you've had an opportunity to sit down outside of a regular meeting where you're considering business to talk about your norms and your practices. So to kind of go through, I'm only going to look at of those things that I think a good planning commission needs to know. I'm going to really concentrate on the last three items, which are the authority and duties of the commission, some of the legal considerations, and some of your procedures. So as all of you probably know, I would hope that you would know that Santa Ana is a charter city. Go off to the next page. Oh, is that? I can do that, yeah. I think I can. Let's see. Oh, see what I did?
You turned it off.
Okay. There we go. Thank you. I said I got it. Santa Ana is a charter city. Unlike a general law city, Santa Ana's, the powers of this commission come from the charter, not from the government code. Section 900 of your charter actually only creates 3 commissions for the entire city. The charter has created the Personnel Board, Parks and Recreation, and the Planning Commission, and that's it. Other commissions have been created by ordinance of the City Council, but you're the only 3 commissions which are mandated by the charter. And Section 910 of the charter contains all of the Planning Commission's powers and duties. And I wanted to go over these really briefly because I wanted to ask you, for those of you that have been sitting on this commission for a while, whether this is all you do, whether you do more than what's here. But the charter says that this commission will sit to review the city's general plan. When was the last time that the commission actually sat down and looked at the city's general plan to make recommendations on what changes were required? That's actually a mandate of the charter. You're supposed to make studies and plans for future land uses. And what I left out of here is that you're actually supposed to do that in particular with the city's recreational and open space plans. I don't know whether that's anything you guys have ever really taken a solid look at. This was new to me. You're supposed to annually review the city's capital improvement program for general plan consistency. I don't think that capital improvement program has ever been sent to you. And that's the kind of thing that the charter says would be useful to have its planning commission. Does it come to you?
Yeah, we get a presentation.
You get a presentation on it. So you're supposed to review it, make recommendations for, as I said, general plan consistency, review subdivisions and zoning, which of course I see your agenda, so you do that all the time, and report findings and recommendations to the city council and city manager. So it really is, in some ways, a limitation on authority. That's the authority that comes out of the charter. And we know that the Planning Commission acts on behalf of the City Council in deciding on and recommending land use activities. And the City Council needs the Planning Commission. And this is where sometimes I have not, in the 3 years I've been here, seen the real connection between the work of the Planning Commission and the work of the Council. Sometimes as the Council committees meet to discuss development projects and whatnot, it's a little unclear to me whether the Planning Commission has had any input on that or any conversation about what development might look like. And that I think it's really important because that's the job of the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission has the authority and the responsibility to play a central role in making decisions, and really in terms of the long-term development and what the city looks like. Not just to just come here every 2 weeks and act on a conditional use permit or a variance once in a while, but to really have some input and making recommendations to the council. These are just some characteristics of a great planning commissioner. I was sitting down thinking, okay, if I was looking for all the characteristics of a really good planning commissioner, and a council member were asking me about that, if they said, I have to go make my appointment, what should I be looking for? I think they should be really looking for a balanced, level-headed, and practical person, and someone who's not overly opinionated. Someone who's skilled, someone who understands the community, someone who understands and respects the public processes, someone that's really committed to good planning, someone that doesn't have conflicts of interest, on a regular basis. We all have them, but, so much so that they can't participate. Someone that's not tied to special interest or only serving one segment of the community. Someone who's very objective, knowing the difference between facts and opinions. And really the last part, which is someone that has enough free time to really be engaged and prepared to serve. Someone that has a time to look at the packages, to meet with staff. That would be, in my opinion, kind of an ideal planning commissioner. So once you've got this, authority under the charter, we know what an ideal planning commissioner looks like. We look at, okay, what are the planning commission's communication procedures? What is the processes that you use as a commission to communicate your ideas, your thoughts, to the city council or even to staff. And I'd have to ask you, where do you begin? When do you know when to approach staff? Do you know when to go to the city council? Have you ever gone straight to the city manager? Do you know any of that and how that works in a city manager form of government? Do you know who's really in charge? What do you do if you have a good idea? Do you usually just bring it here to the commission and during commissioner comments you raise it? Do you send emails? What if you know better than the council members? What if the council has made a decision but you just know better than the council? You just know it because maybe you have more experience, maybe in your professional life, maybe you just know as a matter of policy that you can make a better decision than that council did. What if you know better than staff? What if staff is making a recommendation? And these are the things that really go to the best practices for the commission because these are real life issues. These things happen. I know you can't sit there and say, I've never been in a position where I think I knew better than the council or I knew better than what that recommendation was. So the point of some of the training today is to talk about how do we deal with these issues and how do we communicate. You're a public official now that you've been appointed. I know some of you have been serving for many years, but while you remain an individual with all of your rights, you are a public official. You're representing the city of Santa Ana and not necessarily your own personal views. In the same way that I have to leave I didn't have this one on there, so I snuck this one in. So, I did put it on there. Okay, so you are a public official, and you're not necessarily here just to express your personal views, but the views of the community and how that's going to benefit the community. And in a community that has best practices, where the commissions are really fully functioning at a very high level, you see that the policies of the city council, that they're aligned down the road with their commissions. That's not to say that commissioners don't have differences of opinion, and that's not to say that you don't disagree with the city council, because that can happen. But what do you do at the end of the day when the city council has set policy? What is your practice? Do you understand that your role within them setting policy is that you can have the different opinion, but that just like I can have a different opinion, I give it to the city council, but once the city council has taken one of the options I've given them, I don't get to go out and say, well, they took option 1, but I really think they should have taken option 2. At least I don't get to tell anyone other than my husband that. But because I serve in that role as a public official, and I think we need to begin in the city of Santa Ana. This is where we really get to the heart of it, having a conversation about how we all get into the same boat and row together. Because I think the city is getting near that point with its finances, with the manager that you have, of truly getting back to that city manager form of government, particularly in the hires that the city has made in the last in the last year. And this part of understanding how that process works is really important. That's not to say that some of the habits that were developed when things were a little more chaotic are bad necessarily. It just means to say that now as we're trying to rebuild and put in processes, we need to all be mindful and respectful of those processes. It all starts oops, I went the wrong way, did I? It all starts with the relationship with staff. And the planning staff may work with the commission, but something that you really have to understand if you don't understand this, and this may clear up a lot of confusion, is at the end of the day, not one of the staff members in this room work for the planning commission. They're not accountable to you. They're accountable to the city manager. So I don't know if that comes as a surprise to you, because it does when I do this training, once in a while it does come as a surprise. Because you sit there and say, but wait a second, we're the planning commission. We've been appointed by the council members. This is, we want to go in this direction. But at the end of the day, the employees actually answer to the city manager. Also, the city manager is pretty smart. He understands that he has to be respectful of the commission. But if you were to give staff a suggestion or maybe even a mandate and they didn't do it and you were frustrated with them, if the city manager said to them, you can't do that, they work for them. This is a city manager form of government. And so mandates come down, the implementation of policies come down through the city manager's office. That's in your charter. You don't have to be a city manager form of government. Other cities are not, but you are, because that's what your charter says you are. It's not within the commission's authority to tell staff to prepare a zoning amendment, how to approach an issue, or how to process an application. It is within the commission's purview to make a recommendation. Clearly, if this commission says, we want the city council to know that we think we should amend the code to do X, Y, or Z, clearly that's within your authority to make a suggestion to the city council. But to come to a commission meeting and to say to a staff member, I want you to go do this, or I want you to process this application this way, you're a recommending body. And so I think we just need to keep in mind that your authority comes from your ability to make recommendations to the council. I always say that if you do have issues, my recommendation is that you should share them with the council member who appointed you. If you're really frustrated about something, I would really recommend that you go back to the council member who appointed you, because they have then a direct line of communication with the city manager and can share with the city manager maybe an idea, a frustration, or something that's on your mind. And also, you always have the ability of adopting your own resolution at this level and sending up the recommendation as a whole to the city council. Again, I'm making these recommendations as best practices that work in other communities and really start to streamline the communication between the commission through the staff and up to the city council. We also look at what your relationship is with the city council. So you act in an advisory role for land use approvals. General plan, zoning. Not necessarily a body that gets to tell the city council how they should spend the surplus. If you think they should spend the surplus in a way that complements the land use issues, maybe, but not necessarily a commission that does that. And I don't think since I've been here I've ever seen the commission attempt to do something like that. I'm not at all your meetings, but I don't know that I've seen you necessarily try to go into an area that the Parks and Rec Commission should be addressing. Now, I must say that some of those other commissions do try to get into your business. We've had some of the other commissions who are trying to be the planners and trying to go the other direction. I haven't seen you guys do that, but I have seen them do that. An advisory means that the Planning Commission makes recommendations to the City Council, and the Council has the final say. The Planning Commission recommends policy, and the Council makes the policy. You recommend it, but they have to be the ones to adopt it. And I know that one of the things that I hear, because I do a lot of Planning Commission training, I've done some training with the League of California Cities and the Planning Division there, is I often hear commissions complain about the fact that they spend so much time. Perhaps you've reviewed a project that's taken up 4 or 5 months of your lives, and you make a recommendation and the City Council overturns it. I hear that. If I hear one complaint from commissioners, that's what I hear most frequently, is that we worked so hard on that. Don't they appreciate us? We don't get paid. This is all volunteer work. And all I can say is at the end of the day, that's how the process works, that the council gets to make those decisions. I wanted to go through real quickly a basic format for discussing agenda items if you think that would be helpful. Do you guys think you do pretty good on discussing agenda items? I don't want to bore you, but do you have trouble addressing some of your agenda items, or is it usually pretty good process?
Well, we have there's a kind of a format to follow. I guess we'll call it a cheat sheet. Mm-hmm. And it seems as though we're following, I'm reading your items here. 1, 2, 3, 4. All of that is covered. I mean,
Okay.
if I deviate from it, usually a city attorney or planning staff will remind me if I miss something. But
Okay. So
we've had a few legal questions that come up on order, but usually that's corrected. The vice chair is excellent at nudging me if I forget something. So, we have a pretty good team here.
Okay, good. Well, I just wanted to make sure that you understand the basic format for discussing agenda items as you address them, because it's really important to me. If a recommendation of yours goes up to the city council affirms it, for example, and we end up with a lawsuit, that administrative record tells the whole story about how the commission functions and is really integral to our ability to defend a decision the city makes. And I think maintaining that process, particularly when you have controversial items, is really important. The process that I saw earlier seemed to be a fairly easy applicant before you. Those are the easy ones. But the more difficult ones, I think, really require you to try to stick within the parameters of again, best practices, which is announcing the agenda item, having the staff make the presentation, going on and asking the commissioners if they have questions or clarification, and then inviting public comment. One of the things I had to do the other night, and it's not easy for a city attorney, but sometimes I even have to remind the council members. I don't know if any of you were watching the meeting, but we're having our meeting, and it was time for public comment. And right in the middle of public comment, one of the electeds said, called up, oh, can you come up here, department head, and answer this question? And I'm like, no, time out. I'm the one that has to throw that flag every once in a while. Of course, the electeds get mad at me because here we are in this, they're being taped. They get mad because they're like, you're making us look bad. It's like, no, I'm not making you look bad, but this is about public comment. And during public comment, it's the one time on the agenda that is our time to be respectful of the members of the public who come to talk. And we should be taking notes on what they say. And if you have follow-up questions, you can always direct staff to go follow up. But we shouldn't be getting into a dialogue with members of our public when they're here for public comment. There's a process. If it's the applicant, you may have an opportunity to say, I'd like to invite the applicant back up and ask the applicant questions. But when there's members of the public, they get their 4 minutes. It's intended to be that way. It's not an opportunity to really have dialogue with them. So it's important that we maintain that also for fairness so that everybody gets their fair share of time. Then, you make that motion to, the chair can invite a motion. You can have a second on that motion. And then after that, you can have a discussion and you can take a vote on the motion. So it sounds to me like you probably have that process down fairly well.
Yeah, we're following that format. It's pretty close to that.
Good. So then a couple real other things real quick that I just wanted to talk about is just courtesy and decorum. I have received some feedback, and this is not just from the Planning Commission, when we were discussing with the department heads in our executive management team meeting, that once in a while we can really get into some debate and conversations at all of our commission levels, either by commissioners or members of the public, and we really need to make sure that one person is speaking at one time. I don't know if that applies here, but some of the feedback that I've gotten is that sometimes people are jumping in. It's really the responsibility of the chair to try to manage that conversation. Again, I don't know if that happens here. I did definitely get some feedback that some of our commissions are struggling with that issue. We need to make sure that you don't speak before you're recognized. The chair, we have a chair for a reason. The chair needs to make sure that you're recognized. He can take little notes on who's asked to speak and in what order, and we make sure that the chair is being fair to everybody and is giving everyone equal opportunity to speak. We need to make sure especially, and this is especially true for the Planning Commission more so than any of the other commissions, that your discussion is focused on the agenda item. And not the personality of the applicant, not about some assumption that you've made about the applicant, not about your personal feelings about the applicant, but you're really focused in on the agenda item. And again, this is another thing that's more difficult, and as Lisa really starts to feel comfortable in her role here as advising the Planning Commission, I'm really encouraging her to help maintain those best practices of keeping you focused on the agenda items. And this is for all of the commissions. We have a new art commission, and they could be starting to talk about one issue, and then before we know it, they're off over here trying to make policy on a land use item. And so it's really the job of the legal advisor sitting there. So don't get mad at Lisa if she has to raise her hand. When I was early in my career, one of my electeds gave me a brass whistle. And so I don't know if she needs that with this commission, but some of our others might. And so that's just her job. She has to raise her hand and really kind of get in there. Yes.
I have a question on motions, because that seems to be an area where we're, at least maybe I am, rusty in terms of, there's a motion, there might be a second, or there might be a motion, and then there's a substitute motion, and there starts to be some confusion regarding, what happens to the first motion, and then we have a substitute motion. Where do we turn to? Is that Robert's Rules we turn to?
Well, it's so funny because I had another 25 pages of this training session that just goes over parliamentary procedure. I took it out because I wanted to do high level. We can talk about it, and then maybe if we need to do some additional training, if that's something that would be helpful to you, I'd be happy to come back and do a 10 or 15 minutes just on parliamentary procedure. But you should know that most public bodies will use a form of like Robert's Rules of Order, but you're not mandated to do that. And your bylaws, which I'm sure you have a resolution that establishes your bylaws, identifies whatever procedure you're supposed to use. I think if you just stick to the 10 steps that I went over previously that are in your handout, you'd probably do pretty well. Now, some commissions and some elected bodies say that before there's any discussion, they ask for a motion right out of the gate. I work with some that do that. The staff presentation is made. The commission asks questions, and then right out of the gate, the chair says, "Do we have a motion?" There might be a motion to approve. There might be a motion to deny. Others like to have a little bit of conversation among themselves before they get to that point. I really think it's a preference of the chair, because the chair gets to run the meeting and
Well, it
gets to
depends
decide.
on the mood or the project or et cetera. If there hasn't been much questioning during the opportunity to question staff or an applicant, sort of like our agenda item we had tonight, then it's a little easier sometimes to ask for the motion. But usually I'll say, do we have a motion and or discussion? And that gives an opportunity for, let's say we're not quite convinced, or we might want to talk about it a little bit, because I do enjoy having some discussion, even if it's complimentary, before a motion, especially if it's complimentary.
And that really is the culture of the commission. It depends on how the chair wants to handle that. If you know that something's going to be very controversial, what my recommendation is to ask staff or ask the city attorney who's here to give you a reminder on how those motions are made. So usually if you have a motion in a second, you can have someone and you're having discussion on that, and you say, look, that motion really isn't getting anywhere. You want to offer a substitute motion because you think, if I just tweak that motion a little bit, I can get on board with it and I can vote for it. We can be done with this conversation. You can do that. And that's probably what happens. As the chair, we're not Congress, so I'd like to say, I think for a planning commission, I'd probably take one substitute motion, and then if that's on the floor and something else comes, just kind of take a step back and say, look, where are we? Here's the motion, and reiterate what that is, and then here's the substitute motion. And I would actually take action on those items before you get into a third substitute or a fourth. So I kind of call it cleaning the slate before you move on to another alternative.
Well, we've had that, and Lisa's helped us out to get straight on it, because it gets confusing. So,
Yeah.
but before, we had one recent kind of confusion and emotion that we had difficulty with, and got to voted on where someone's voting where they thought they voted on the other item. And so I think when we start getting the substitutes, I'm probably going to reiterate the motion again.
Yes.
And be real clear that everybody understands it before you vote on it. If
Because
it
you
gets-
vote on the substitute motion first.
Yeah, and that's where that gets a little confusing
It
to
does.
me. Because there may be a group of people that don't care for the substitute motion, and thus it could fail. But we don't want the project or item to fail, and we bring back a different motion. So usually if I see that I'm starting to drown, then I'll ask Lisa to
Yeah.
chime in.
Again,
So-
and I'll talk with Lisa too. Again, everybody has a different style. My style is once I get the substitute motion, if there's some discussion and they're going to take a vote, I usually will stop my city council and say, okay, can we get the city clerk to read the substitute motion back?
That's probably a good idea.
And then once they read the substitute motion back, you say, if this fails, we're going to go to the first motion. And just kind of clear so that everybody's understanding exactly
Yeah,
where
it's just
you
fair
are.
to all of us know exactly what we're voting on,
Right.
and not have a no vote on something you maybe wanted to vote yes on just because
Yes.
of a substitute. So
That happens sometimes. I want to remind the commission that chair, you're in control. You get to decide whether you want to cut off discussion at a certain point. You get to decide whether discussion is too personal or too loud or too disruptive to the group. And that goes for members of the public as well. I mean, we
Great.
do have to respect them, but if we do get to a scenario where it's so disruptive, you always have the right to take a break. And I tell folks, exercise the right to take a break, because sometimes all we need is a few minutes to just breathe, and everybody will return and kind of in a calmer state. What's really important, I think, is maintaining civility in our meetings. And I kind of save these last two things for the end because, I came to the city of Santa Ana, and the very first day before my contract was even approved, I faced what I didn't think was very civil. There certainly wasn't civility in our council meetings. And I've really worked hard as the city attorney to talk with even elected officials when I've seen something that I don't think makes us look very good. Because one of my goals, I've always said on a personal level, is my job is to help my client, the municipal entity, look as great as it can, to make great decisions and to move forward. And sometimes it is just human nature to let things just interfere with that process. So I think that we have a job, all of us, to make Santa Ana appear in the best light that we possibly can, from our staff to our appointed officials. I'm an appointed official, just as you are, to our elected officials. And I think sometimes we just fail to separate the people from the problem. And when I've been sitting there at the council meetings and things have gotten really ugly, it's that it's just gotten way too personal. It's just personal. And we're not separating, we're not focusing in on the issue. And I think the chair can help, say, what are we here to do? This is an item to act on a variance, or what's before us is acting on the conditional use permit. We're not here to solve all the problems of the world. We're here to decide whether there are sufficient conditions here. I think we have to limit our misunderstandings by talking to each other. If you guys are not, I know you got the Brown Act, you can't be talking about items that are on your agenda, but do you guys spend just a little bit of time together? Do you ever
After
I
meetings,
know you don't
and-
get
yeah.
food together, so that sometimes helps to kind of relax and get to know each other. That's very helpful. And that's why I'm a real believer in hoping that we can get some of our elected officials to do best practices and come meet with the commission. Sometimes it's just a social thing where you get together for lunch and you just to talk about how things are going without being in an environment where you have to notice a meeting, but just to kind of develop those relationships across the board. And I look at them like tentacles, from the electeds to the various different commissions and having staff in there. One of the things that goes a long ways is just making sure you get all the facts. And I said this the last time I was here a few years ago, and I've had this conversation with Hassan. If commissioners individually or a commission as a whole is not feeling good about staff or is expressing frustrations, we have to have a conversation about whether you feel you're getting all the information. And if you're not, it's your responsibility to contact staff. So you have your newest staff member here as well. I would have a conversation with her about what her expectations are for the planning commission meetings, what's her style, how does she prefer her communication with all of you. I would definitely go out of my way and have that conversation with her as soon as possible, because she's the person who now will be most interacting with you on all of these agenda items. Using a fair process, you guys are pretty powerful. You make some really important decisions. And recognizing that you have that power is really important, and making sure that you're treating every applicant that becomes before you in the same way. One thing that's hard to do, because as attorneys it's really hard, is just being open to remain open to being persuaded. Do you come to your planning commissions with your minds made up? When you look at an agenda item, do you already say, okay, I've made up my mind? Or do you come saying, I think I'm leaning in this direction, but I'd really like to hear what Phil has to say. I'd really like to hear what Lynette has to say. Do you come here with that kind of open mind? Or do you come to the meeting saying, darn it, I am going to approve this project, and I'm going to get all my commissioners to agree that we're going to approve this project no matter what? And it really is the mindset in which you approach the issues. And some of these rules, I'm telling you, I know they apply to our council members as well. I was doing this, I was thinking, I've had these same conversations, maybe not in an open public meeting, but I've had the same conversations with them about making sure that we're maintaining civility. And I think our meetings have gotten a lot better too. If you do watch them, or if you've attended meetings, we're really making some progress there. And just recognizing the good in others. All of you came here to serve. Don't you love that big paycheck you get, for reading
awesome.
you're away from your family or your friends on a Monday night. So we have to remember that. And so the last couple pointers and tips is, please don't engage the audience in dialogue. Whether it's the applicant per se or members of the public, use the process. So if you have a question for the applicant, you have a question for a member of the public, go through the chair. Chair, I have this question. And you kind of focus your question to the chair. Either the chair can ask the question, can that person come back up? But what I'd really recommend that we not do, and this, again, I'm really working with the city council on this, is not to have a dialogue directly, because it does lead to less civility, and it does lead at some point to kind of the whole meeting kind of spinning out of control. I'm going to also ask that you prepare in advance for the meetings by reviewing your agenda and staff reports. I'm just assuming that all of you are doing that. I don't know how thick your reports are. I can imagine being on the council, some of our agenda packets are like that, and I know that's a lot of information, but it's really important that you read them. And if you have a specific question or concern, contact staff in advance of the meeting. That's probably the most important thing I can recommend. And do you guys do that? Do you not have time? Do you kind of show up here and ask a question? Are they good about that?
I personally do. I personally do, and I think you bringing that up is a good point, because I think when you get the packet on Thursday, it really gives you Friday and Monday. And sometimes Friday they're not in, but I've just called the planner who's in charge of that item, or if I see a error in it or something, and I found that way I've come to the meeting already knowing the answer, and I think I prefer that over in a public forum, asking questions that we could ask ahead of time, even via email. Sean?
And if I could expand on that, I also think it's important that that we don't do planning from the dais. I mean, the same thing where you have an applicant at the podium, and then we want you to add this to your project or do that. I think that's a discussion that could be had prior to, because I mean, you got a gun pointed to their head. They're wanting. What's your answer going to be? Most times you're going to say yes to whatever, but I think that we need to get away from that, just as well as not putting staff on blast right there. I think we need to have this extend the same courtesy to our applicants, and I think that I've had discussion with Jim about this many times. Is that just best practice would be, don't put the applicant on. We want you to do this. We want you to add another tree to your development. Well, most likely they're going to say, sure, we'll do it, because they want a yes vote. I think the best practice would be, maybe that's a discussion that, since we have the packet ahead of time, maybe we could have that discussion prior to the meeting.
No, Sean, I think that's a really excellent point, and I'd like just to expand on that a little bit, because I'm a pretty candid person. We want to get to a point in this city where every person who comes before the city commission and the city council is completely judged on their merits and not on assumptions about who they know, who they've made a campaign contribution to, what they've done, and where. And the best way to fight against those types of things, again, is to use best practices. If you're looking at a project, and I have that one slide, I'll go back, where we talk about, what if you know better than staff? What if you know better than the city council? There are times when, I'm going to try to find that, there are times when you could, you know better, and you want to be heard. But the last place you want to show off that you're smarter or better is here, whether it's to staff or whether it's to the applicant. Right. If you really truly want to be a good public official, what you want to do is call staff and say, I've looked at the design and I really think that putting in 4 more trees could really get my support for this project. And you know what? Staff is the best prepared, because staff can go back and say to the applicant, one of my commissioners called me. That's the best way to do it, versus someone feeling, because guys, you know what? We have to admit that we are where we are. Santa Ana does have, in some ways, assumptions that people make about the way we process things. And if we're going to get better, and if we're going to achieve more excellence and more professionalism and become one of those high-functioning cities, that's the best way to do it. Now, that doesn't mean if you're here, an idea doesn't pop into your head. But again, work through staff. If you have one of those things that's going to be like, oh my gosh, I really want to change that condition, maybe you could just write a note to staff. And maybe, staff could have that conversation and bring that up for you. That doesn't take away your power as a commissioner, but you want to be careful. I think that's a good point. You just want to be careful how you approach it.
Does anyone have any questions on that item? I mean, that has been a thing I've noticed in 10 years, or 11 now, in Planning Commission. There seems to be a lot of negotiation at the time of the presentation, and as Sean said, it's like they have a gun to their head. Well, yeah, okay, we'll put the tree in, and it's a great example, the tree, but because we've had literally, if it was only a 36-inch box instead of a 20-pound, I mean, it was just to the point of ridiculous, which also extends the length of the meeting unnecessarily. Right. And I think your point of, since we have emails from everybody's that's in the staff report, it's so easy to just shoot off like you're suggesting an email, and then the applicant's already, wow, I might have to roll over on this particular thing or not, and we know about it, and I think.
Or if it's a big enough difference, look, I've been involved in a lot of things where we think it's just a run-of-the-mill conditional use permit and someone has a real issue with it. And if it gets to that point, rather than having a conversation about changing 4 or 5 conditions, I'm always a believer of maybe saying, I'd like to make a motion that we continue this item. I am not happy with the
Or
Or recess for a second, yeah, you know.
I think I like the recess because
Yeah.
the
Continuing puts them behind 2 weeks.
continuance, you know, these
Yeah.
guys, you know, we're trying to in a sense, roll out the red carpet to people that want to do business in Santa Ana. And a continuance is my most dreaded word. And as a chairperson, when it gets brought up here, you may see that I resist it. You know?
Yeah, and that, again, that, and I and
so
that's
I like
I
the
think you're right.
recess. What Hassan says a recess.
But
Hey,
you know,
let's
a
take 10
recess to
minutes.
go take a moment to go talk with staff. You guys have all been appointed by your various council members because of what you bring. I mean, I look at all of you, and I'm just looking. One of the things I had on here was just diversity of opinion too, which is important. And so you want that, how you express that, and how you get an applicant to see that you want something different. You have to really work through that.
Oh, Phil, I think one thing I'd like to throw out, and this is something that we actually as a commission had asked previous staff in the past, and that is for us to get an idea of what's coming our way, you know, like kind of future items. Because usually, as you know, for noticing purposes, you're going to know as staff, hey, got to send out the notices, that's a couple of weeks out. And if we have the opportunity to know, I mean, let's just say hypothetically, the item before us tonight, if we had some sort of issue, I mean, I didn't know that was coming to us until I received my agenda packet on Friday. Maybe, you know, 2 weeks earlier, or again, just a little time to, as we're all talking about here, gives us a chance to digest it, talk to staff, and we don't expect to see staff reports, you know, 2 weeks in advance, but just kind of a heads up, you know, hey, big residential development's coming over near First and Harbor. Oh, okay. How many units? We can ask those questions and kind of vet it out. Obviously, we wouldn't make any, you know, calls like to do certain things, but it's just to give us a heads up.
In many communities, that's what's done. You'll have the future agenda items listed at the bottom so that you know ahead of time. You can go out and visit the site. You can take a look at it and understand it 2 weeks or 3 weeks before.
And one example that I've seen, I'm not saying we have to do this here or suggesting it, but just one other city locally, they'll put out a list of projects, especially if they're coming to the commission. That means they had an application deemed complete, that clock starts ticking. So they would actually put out a list. Now, mind you, depending on what the project is, it could be 4 months out, 6 months out, and it's just a simple one-sentence description. Again, I'm not saying we go that extreme, but just the whole point of what I'm saying is just to give us a little lead time.
Well, I think in communicating with your staff, again, that's really good. See, just even having this workshop today to know that that's something that is of interest. We did that with the city council agendas. When I first got here, one of the things I was hearing from council members is that sometimes we show up at a council meeting and we're asked to vote on $1 million IT system, and we had no idea. How long had staff been working on the $1 million IT? How come we didn't know? So one of the things that you might see on the city council agendas now, we have a little thing called like upcoming items. And now that's not everything because we have 72 items, you know, on an agenda, but we'll pick and choose and say, we think the council would really want to know that maybe in the next month this item's going to come before them. And so I think that's just an issue of how staff wants to handle it, and that's good feedback.
Thankfully, we don't have 72 items a meeting, so
no,
slapping one or two at the end of the agenda is not bad, I think.
Exactly, but I'm just saying I understand that whole issue of wanting to know and having that fair communication. I did, real quickly, unless there's any other questions?
Commissioner Bauer, anything?
No, I think you answered that.
Okay.
But then I
Bill?
also wanted to add, I think Hassan indicated with committees, the design committee, for example, and I think that will address some of the concerns. I know it's tough sometimes. We see a project for the first time on Friday, but okay, you know, there's a lot of issues. And frankly, some of my naivete, I didn't know I could just go to the planner and, you know, speak to them about this problem beforehand. I just thought maybe that might even be improper in some sense. But, so, I mean, it is good for this.
Right.
The
The design issues are the ones that I think are probably trickier for you to deal with, because I would say that other recommendations that are brought to you by staff, especially if it's like a conditional use permit, staff has recommended to you conditions that they think would address potential nuisances, and that's why those conditions are before you. And if you're trying to impose a whole set of your own conditions, my question to you would be, why do you want those new conditions? Again, there it is, do you know better than staff? You might. There are times when you might have thought for something that staff hasn't. But if you're trying to redesign the entire conditional use permit, or you're trying to redesign the entire project, then the communication is not working. Because if you're that unhappy with something, if it's that important to you, you'd be calling staff and letting them know. I think you completely missed the boat on this CUP. and you just failed to address the noise that's going to occur. You failed to address whatever the issues are that you want to bring forward. So again, it's a communication. I think the best reason for doing this training was, again, to start with you, because you guys are the most high-profile commission, but also because you have brand new staff, and you have a really wonderful opportunity to work, including kind of your city attorney staff. You got your new director, you've got your new planning manager. Lisa's been sitting with you for a while, but she, is all helping to design what does this commission want moving forward. I want to just do a couple of reminders on the norms. As I said, these are your norms, but although we pulled them out of best practices. But to consistently attend the meetings, again, I have not talked to staff. I don't know if this is an issue, but I know with some of our commissions, attendance at meetings is all haphazard. I'm assuming that all of you are really good about that, and that you can be counted on to be here, and if you're not going to be here, that you've called staff to let them know in advance. Be prompt and prepared to really be in your seat when order is called and when the agenda is ready to move forward is really important. Or if you're not, to call staff and let them know that you're going to be a little bit late. Remembering that all commission members have equal rights, even the chair, although he gets to chair the meeting, he's just one vote like everybody else, and so we have to treat each other equally. And treating staff with professional courtesy is really important. Acting professionally towards each other, staff, and the public, for me, it's rule number one. It's just, we are public officials. It wouldn't look very good for me to go out and yell at a member of the public or raise my voice, because I represent the city of Santa Ana, and I don't think it's right for me to do that. And this applies to every person who's appointed in this city. Speaking, one person at a time, we talked about, and members really must be careful not to attack or question the motives of other members of the commission or of the public. Sometimes it's just necessary to say we have to agree to disagree. We are not going to make any movement on this issue. It's important not to lecture others, particularly each other, and giving others the right to speak. Something that I see less formal here in Santa Ana is even using the surnames when addressing members of the audience or applicants, because a lot of times we have such a familiarity with some of our applicants. I just think we need to get back to, even at the council level, addressing, this is agency director so-and-so or the city manager, but just making sure that because there is a decorum here that we have to maintain. And then treating the applicants and the public with respect, listening with that open mind, is which we went over before. One of the other things I'm having as an issue on the city council is, if you're going to leave the dais and you're not going to return, let your recording secretary know that. Pass her a note so that she can make sure that gets into the minutes, because that's happening to me a little bit at the council. I look up and I've lost my quorum, and I don't know whether they're coming back or not, and I don't know whether to call a break in the meeting or let them go on, but it's important to let your secretary know. I don't know if that's an issue with the planning commission.
I don't think we've ever had anyone leave without saying so.
Oh, boy. Okay, Lisa, I'm
Except for
switching
the
with you. I'm
bathroom,
coming to
maybe.
planning commission meetings. No, sometimes I was at the meeting the other day, and the city manager kind of was hitting me. I said, what's going on? He goes, we don't have a quorum. Where'd they go? I said, I don't know where they went. And you're supposed to know where they went. So, again, we want to make sure that we establish these best practices from the city council throughout all of the commissions. And if you have any thoughts or ideas on what we could change or a different way to present this as we go to the other commissions, I'm all ears. Our goal is just to make sure that we're all functioning at a really high level and within our subject matter jurisdiction. Do you have anything to add, Hassan?
No, thank you. If I may, there's a couple of items that I would add to the last batch of things that you said in relation to to staff commission relationship.